On a rainy Tuesday morning in March 2025, Dr. Rachel Winters sorted through a collection of photographs recently donated to the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. The Caldwell collection, as it was labeled, contained over 300 family photographs spanning from 1890 to 1960, documenting one family's journey through decades of American history. Most of the images followed the expected progression of family milestones: births, graduations, weddings, and holiday gatherings. Dr. Winters, as curator of the museum's upcoming exhibition on post-World War I American family life, was particularly interested in materials from the early 1920s. "This one's promising," she murmured, carefully extracting a well-preserved photograph from its protective sleeve. The formal portrait showed the Caldwell family in 1921. Father James in a dark suit, Mother Eleanor in a fashionable dress with strand of pearls, and their 3 children arranged by height in front of them. The composition was impeccable, the attire appropriate for an upper-middle-class family of the period, and the setting a professional studio with painted backdrop. As Dr. Winters examined the photograph under the archival light, she noticed something unusual about James Caldwell's expression. While the rest of the family displayed the composed, serious faces typical of formal portraits of the era, there was something distinctly different about the father's gaze. His eyes held an intensity that seemed out of place, a tension around the mouth, a rigidity in his posture that suggested something beyond the normal discomfort of portrait sitting. Dr. Winters reached for her magnifying glass. Under closer inspection, James Caldwell's face revealed micro-expressions that a casual observer might miss. What appeared to be fear or perhaps rage, carefully controlled but unmistakably present beneath the veneer of propriety. "Amelia," Dr. Winters called to her research assistant, "I think we may have found something significant here." Amelia Chen, a doctoral candidate in American history specializing in visual culture, carefully examined the photograph Dr. Winters had identified. "You're right about his expression," Amelia confirmed. "There's definitely something incongruous here. The rest of the family presents a picture of prosperity and contentment, but the father's face tells a different story. The date is what interests me," Dr. Winters replied, consulting the meticulous documentation that had accompanied the donation. "May 12, 1921, just weeks after the Emergency Quota Act was introduced to Congress, which would severely restrict immigration. The Caldwells were a prominent business family in Detroit, but their background isn't specified in the donor materials." Amelia studied the photograph more closely. His features suggest he might be of Eastern or Southern European descent. First generation, perhaps. "Let's start with the basics," Dr. Winters suggested. "Census records, naturalization documents, business registries. We need context for this family before we can understand what this expression might signify." Their initial search yielded promising results. The 1920 census listed James Caldwell, age 42, as the owner of Caldwell Manufacturing, which produced automobile parts. His wife Eleanor, 38, was recorded as keeping house. Their children, Robert, 14, Margaret, 11, and Thomas, 7, were all attending school. The family resided in a prosperous neighborhood in Detroit with 2 live-in domestic servants. More revealing was James Caldwell's naturalization record from 1905. His original name, Jakub Kalinski, born in Warsaw, Poland in 1878. He had arrived at Ellis Island in 1896 and had become a naturalized citizen after the required waiting period. He changed his name, Amelia noted. Not uncommon for immigrants trying to assimilate, especially those entering business. The yen. "Timing is interesting," Dr. Winters mused. From Jakub Kalinski to James Caldwell, from Poland to prosperity in Detroit, and then this photograph taken just as anti-immigrant sentiment was reaching new heights in America. "I wonder what he saw coming," Amelia said quietly. The Detroit Historical Society maintained extensive records of the city's industrial development, particularly the explosion of automobile-related manufacturing that had transformed the region. In the early 20th century, Dr. Winters arranged for access to their archives, focusing on Caldwell Manufacturing and its founder. Caldwell started small in 1908, the archivist explained, presenting them with incorporation documents and early business records. He began with a machine shop producing specialized tools, then pivoted to automobile components as the industry boomed. By 1915, Caldwell Manufacturing had secured contracts with several emerging automobile manufacturers, including a significant arrangement with Ford Motor Company. Business ledgers showed steady growth, with a substantial expansion in 1918 to meet wartime production demands. He was very innovative, Amelia noted, reviewing patents filed under James Caldwell's name. 5 patents for manufacturing processes and component designs between 1910 and 1920. He wasn't just a businessman, but a technical innovator. An industry publication from 1919 featured an article on Caldwell Manufacturing's contributions to automotive advancement, with a photograph of James Caldwell standing proudly beside his factory. His expression in this image was markedly different from the 1921 family portrait: confident, relaxed, optimistic. Further investigation revealed that Caldwell employed a significant number of immigrants, particularly from Eastern European communities. Payroll records from 1920 showed nearly 40% of his workforce consisted of first-generation Americans from Poland, Hungary, Italy, and Russia. "Look at this," Dr. Winters said, indicating a series of letters between Caldwell and local politicians. He was advocating against immigration restrictions as early as 1919, arguing that American industry depended on immigrant labor and ingenuity. One letter, written to a Michigan congressman in February 1921, made a passionate case. "As a naturalized citizen who has built an American business, employing hundreds of American workers, I implore you to consider the devastating impact these proposed quotas would have on our industrial capacity and on families seeking the same opportunities I was fortunate to find." The quota legislation was introduced in April 1921, Amelia noted, just weeks before this family photograph was taken. The proposed Emergency Quota Act of 1921 represented a watershed moment in American immigration policy. Dr. Winters and Amelia expanded their research to understand the broader context surrounding the Caldwell family portrait. The legislation would limit the annual number of immigrants from any country to 3% of the number of residents from that country living in the United States as of the 1910 census, Amelia explained during their research meeting. This would dramatically reduce immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, while maintaining access for Western Europeans. Newspaper archives from Detroit in spring 1921 revealed increasing tensions around immigration issues. The Detroit Free Press published several articles and editorials supporting the quotas, citing concerns about unassimilable foreigners and the protection of American jobs and values. Letters to the editor demonstrated divided public opinion, with industrial leaders generally opposing restrictions while many others supported them. The xenophobia was thinly veiled, Dr. Winters observed, reviewing the materials. And for someone, like Caldwell, who had changed his name and presumably worked to minimize his immigrant origins, this public sentiment would have been deeply concerning. They discovered a speech James Caldwell had delivered to the Detroit Chamber of Commerce in March 1921, arguing against the quota system. "The greatness of American industry has always been fueled by the hunger and determination of those who chose to become Americans. To close our doors now is to betray our economic future and our national character." The speech had generated controversy. Several chamber members had walked out in protest, and subsequent newspaper coverage included calls for boycotts of Caldwell manufacturing from nativist groups. He was putting himself at considerable risk, Amelia noted, both his business and his social standing. Most revealing was a private letter they found in the Detroit Historical Society's collection, written by a business associate to another local manufacturer. Caldwell seems to have forgotten that he is now James, not Jacob. His vocal opposition to the quotas has reminded everyone of his origins, which he had so carefully obscured. One wonders if his wife's family, the Hancocks, appreciate having their name associated with such controversy. "The pressure must have been immense," Dr. Winters said quietly. And then he sat for this family portrait, trying to project an image of the perfect American family while his world was potentially unraveling. Eleanor Caldwell, née Hancock, came from an established Detroit family with connections to the city's older social circles. Marriage records showed she had wed James Caldwell in 1906, shortly after his naturalization. The Hancock family had been in Michigan since the 1850s, with Eleanor's father serving as a bank director and her uncle as a state legislator. The marriage represented a significant social step for James. Dr. Winters explained as they examined society page clippings from the Detroit News. The Hancocks opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed to an immigrant entrepreneur. Photographs from charity events and social gatherings throughout the 1910s showed James and Eleanor Caldwell increasingly accepted in Detroit's upper circles. James served on civic committees, while Eleanor was active in the Ladies' Auxiliary and Arts patronage. They worked hard to establish themselves as the ideal American family, Amelia observed. The successful businessman, the socially connected wife, the well-educated children. The portrait from 1921 is almost like an advertisement for their achieved status. The Detroit Country Club membership roster from 1919 included the Caldwells, though notes in the club archives indicated their application had been initially deferred before being accepted, a subtle indication of lingering social barriers despite their wealth and connections. Something changed in early 1921, Dr. Winters noted, reviewing social calendars and newspaper mentions. The Caldwells began to appear less frequently at major social events. No explanation given, just a gradual fading from the society pages. A particularly telling document was an invitation list for a major charity gala in April 1921, where the Caldwells' names appeared but were subsequently crossed out with a notation, reconsidered due to recent controversies. His advocacy against immigration restrictions was costing them socially, Amelia concluded. Most revealing was a partially preserved letter from Eleanor's brother, William Hancock, Jr., to Eleanor in late April 1921. Your husband's vocal positions have placed the family in an untenable situation. Father asks that James refrain from further public statements that might embarrass the Hancock name. We have worked too long to establish our position in this community to have it compromised by immigrant sentimentality. The family portrait was taken just 2 weeks after this letter, Dr. Winters noted. No wonder his expression carries such tension. To gain further insight into the Caldwell family dynamics, Dr. Winters and Amelia sought records related to the 3 children visible. In the photograph, Robert, Margaret, and Thomas, school records from Detroit Academy, where the Caldwell children were enrolled, provided intriguing context. All 3 were excellent students, with Robert particularly distinguished in mathematics and sciences. A letter of recommendation for Robert's college application noted that he was a credit to the American educational system and proof of the assimilation possible in just 1 generation. The phrasing is telling, Amelia remarked. It implies that despite his immigrant father, Robert had become satisfactorily American. More revealing were entries from Margaret Caldwell's diary, which had been donated to the Michigan Women's Historical Collection in the 1980s. The entries spanning January to June 1921 provided a child's perspective on the family's changing circumstances. An entry from February 1921 read, "Father argued with Uncle William again today." Mother cried afterward, something about father speaking at a meeting. I don't understand why it upsets everyone so much. By April, Margaret's observations had become more specific. Bobby came home with a bloody nose today. He wouldn't say what happened, but I heard him tell father that some boys called us dirty Polacks and said we should go back where we came from. Father looked so angry and sad at the same time. He told Bobby we are Americans and to hold his head high. A particularly poignant entry appeared the day before the family portrait was taken. Mother says we must all look our very best tomorrow for the photograph. She said it's important to show everyone that we are a proper family. Father has been very quiet. When I asked him if he was excited about the portrait, he just patted my head and said appearances matter more than we realize in America. The final entry they found from this period, dated May 20th, 1921, was most revealing. Father's factory had windows broken last night. Mother doesn't think I know, but I heard them talking. Someone painted "foreigners out" on the wall. Father says we must not show fear. I am trying to be brave like him. The children were caught in the middle of the backlash, Dr. Winters said, quietly. No wonder James looks so conflicted in that photograph. He's trying to protect his family while staying true to his principles. Financial records from Caldwell Manufacturing revealed concerning patterns beginning in spring 1921. Several smaller contracts were abruptly canceled in April and May, with correspondents citing reorganization or changing business needs, rather than explicitly stating the real reasons. These cancellations align perfectly with James Caldwell's public advocacy against immigration restrictions, Dr. Winters noted. It appears his business was being targeted. Bank records showed a significant withdrawal of investment capital in late April when a major local investor pulled out of an expansion project. The investor's letter vaguely referenced concerns about the company's future stability without specifying the nature of those concerns. Most telling was correspondence between Ford Motor Company's purchasing department and Caldwell Manufacturing. While the large Ford contracts remained in place, a handwritten note from a purchasing manager to his superior suggested underlying tensions. Caldwell components remain superior, but his controversial positions are causing difficulties. Harrison suggests we begin seeking alternative suppliers for the 22 model year, to be implemented gradually to avoid disruption. Labor records revealed another dimension of pressure. As anti-immigrant sentiment increased, Caldwell had refused to dismiss his foreign-born workers despite suggestions from business associates that doing so might ease the pressure on his company. A memo to his factory foreman in early May 1921 demonstrated his position. All employees of Caldwell Manufacturing are to be judged solely on the quality of their work and their dedication to our company. Rumors of an impending purge of foreign-born workers are categorically false. We stand by our people, regardless of their origins. This principled stance came at a cost. Insurance records indicated a 40% increase in Caldwell's premiums following the vandalism incident in May, with the provider citing elevated risk factors for the property. He was being squeezed from all sides, Amelia observed, socially, financially, and now with threats of violence. Yet he refused to abandon either his principles or his workers. A personal letter from James to a childhood friend in Chicago, dated just days after the family portrait, revealed his private thoughts. I built this life by becoming what America asked of me, changing my name, my speech, burying my past. Now I find that even that transformation is insufficient. They want me to participate in closing the door behind me, to deny others the opportunities I had. This I cannot do, even as I feel everything I've built beginning to crumble. The Emergency Quota Act was signed into law on May 19, 1921, just 1 week after the Caldwell family portrait was taken. Dr. Winters and Amelia researched its immediate effects on Detroit's immigrant communities and businesses like Caldwell Manufacturing that relied on immigrant labor and expertise. Immigration. Records from June 1921 showed the dramatic impact. Arrivals from Eastern Europe plummeted, with Poland particularly affected. Several employees at Caldwell Manufacturing had been sponsoring family members who were now prohibited from entering the country. Company correspondence revealed James Caldwell's efforts to help his affected employees. He retained an immigration attorney to explore options for family members caught in limbo, and established a small fund to assist workers whose relatives were stranded in Europe with partially paid passage. He was fighting a losing battle, Amelia noted, reviewing the materials. The legislation was just the beginning of a broader shift in American immigration policy. Indeed, newspaper editorials following the act's passage suggested more restrictions would follow, with calls for even stricter quotas and additional barriers to naturalization. The Detroit Free Press published a political cartoon showing Uncle Sam building a wall labeled American Values to hold back a tide of foreign-looking figures. A speech James Caldwell delivered to his employees in late May revealed his perspective. While today feels like a defeat for the America I believe in, the America that welcomed me and gave me the opportunity to build this company with you, I remain committed to demonstrating through our success and our character that America is strengthened, not weakened, by those who choose to become Americans. The local Polish-language newspaper, Dziennik Polski, ran a feature on Caldwell in June 1921, identifying him publicly as Jakub Kalinski for perhaps the first time in decades. The article praised his courage in standing against the quota system and described him as a son of Poland who has not forgotten his origins despite his success. This public recognition of his Polish identity was probably both affirming and terrifying for him, Dr. Winters observed. It acknowledged his authenticity, but also further exposed him at a dangerous time. Business records from summer 1921 showed Caldwell Manufacturing weathering the immediate storm, retaining most major contracts despite the pressure. James had apparently found a tenuous balance, continuing his advocacy in more private forums, while maintaining the business relationships necessary for survival. By late summer 1921, the Caldwell family faced critical decisions about their future. Dr. Winters and Amelia pieced together the narrative through correspondence, business records, and school registrations. A letter from Eleanor to her cousin in Boston, dated July 1921, revealed the family's deliberations. James refuses to retreat from his principles, though it has cost us dearly in certain circles. I admit I initially urged a more cautious approach for the children's sake, but seeing their pride in their father's courage has changed my perspective. The children now understand that standing for one's beliefs is the true measure of character, not social acceptance. This shift in Eleanor's position appeared to solidify the family's unity in the face of continuing challenges. Property records showed the Caldwells sold their home in Detroit's fashionable Boston Edison neighborhood in August 1921, purchasing a somewhat more modest but still substantial house in a different area of the city. James Caldwell's business strategy also evolved. Corporate filings from September 1921 showed a restructuring of Caldwell Manufacturing, with an increased focus on specialized components where the company maintained technical advantages that made them difficult to replace. As a supplier, most significantly, school records indicated a change for the Caldwell children. Rather than returning to Detroit Academy for the fall term, all three were enrolled in Elwood School, a progressive institution founded by educators with reformist views. The school's philosophy emphasized civic engagement and diverse perspectives, with a student body that included children from various backgrounds. A letter from the headmaster to James and Eleanor welcomed the children and noted, "We are particularly pleased to have students whose family demonstrates the principles of civic courage and international perspective that we seek to instill in all our pupils." The Detroit Polish Business Association records showed that in October 1921, James Caldwell became a member under his birth name, Jakub Kalinski, while maintaining his legal name for broader business purposes. This deliberate reconnection with his heritage marked a significant shift from his previous decades of careful assimilation. The family didn't retreat, Amelia observed. They regrouped and reaffirmed their values, even at a cost. A final document from 1921, a Christmas card sent to business associates, showed a new family photograph. In this image, taken just 7 months after the formal portrait that had begun their investigation, James Caldwell looked directly at the camera with a calm, resolved expression that contrasted sharply with the tension visible in the May photograph. The Smithsonian exhibition opened in September 2025, featuring the 1921 Caldwell family portrait prominently alongside the research findings. Titled "Faces of America, Identity and Belonging in the Early 20th Century," the exhibition drew considerable attention from both academics and the public. What makes this photograph so compelling, Dr. Winters explained to a group of journalists at the opening, is how it captures a pivotal moment of personal and national conflict. James Caldwell sits at the intersection of competing identities and loyalties: success versus authenticity, assimilation versus heritage, personal security versus public principle. The exhibition traced the Caldwell family's journey beyond 1921, revealing how their decisions that year shaped subsequent decades. Caldwell Manufacturing had survived the immediate crisis and adapted successfully, remaining family-owned until 1956. The company became known for its progressive employment practices and technical innovation. All three Caldwell children had gone on to remarkable careers. Robert became an engineer who patented several manufacturing processes. Margaret, influenced by her family's experience, became an immigration attorney who worked on landmark cases in the 1940s and 1950s. Thomas, the youngest, served in World War II before joining and eventually leading the family business. Most poignantly, The exhibition included a speech James Caldwell delivered at his son Robert's college graduation in 1929, shortly before the stock market crash. When I came to this country as Jakub Kalinski, I believed I needed to become someone else to succeed. As an American, what I've learned is that America is not strengthened by our conformity, but by our contributions. The courage to stand for principle, even when costly, is the true American legacy I hope to leave my children. Visitors to the exhibition were particularly moved by photographs showing James in his later years, when he had begun to publicly embrace his Polish heritage. A 1935 image showed him at the opening of a community center for immigrant families that the Caldwells had helped fund. The family portrait from 1921 captures a man at a crossroads, Amelia explained during a gallery talk. His expression reveals the strain of trying to reconcile competing values and pressures. What makes this story remarkable is not just this moment of crisis, but the resolution the family ultimately found. Not by retreating from the conflict, but by moving through it toward a more authentic integration of their identities. The final piece in the exhibition was a candid photograph from 1941, showing an aging James and Eleanor Caldwell surrounded by their children and grandchildren at a family gathering. James's face, no longer constrained by fear or convention, displayed a genuine smile, the expression of a man who had found resolution through staying true to his core values despite the challenges of his time.